This week we're going to start building a Skew T animation like this using Matplotlib's Func animation, but first let's get some data and create the basic plot. Hello, I'm John Lehman, a software engineer for NSF Unidata. This week we're going to start building an animation like that I showed you in the intro by using Matplotlib's Func animation, but first we need to get the basic plot down, get our data read in, which are things that we're already pretty familiar with, but there's going to be a few little tricks to this plot, and then next we'll look at how we animate it and some of the interesting problems that we run into trying to do that. So to start off with, we're going to, of course, have lots of imports for something complex like this. From datetime, I'm going to import the datetime object. I'm going to import Matplotlib.pyplot as PLT, because of course we're doing plotting operations. From Matplotlib.GridSpec, I'm going to import the GridSpec object. From MetPy.plots, I'm going to import the Skew T object. From MetPy.calc, I'm going to import parcel profile, LCL, capesyn, and getLayer. Now, of course, we could import all of MetPy.calc as mpcalc, but I've chosen to do it like this week. This is really just importing those functions that we need. And if I were doing this in some sort of, a highly distributed way, I may not want to import the whole calc module, just what's needed. From MetPy.units, I'm going to import the units registry, as well as our pandas data frame to unit arrays helper. I'm going to import pandas as PD. And to get our data, we're going to use Siphon's simple web service, the Wyoming module, and I'm going to import the Wyoming upper air object. Okay, so now we've got all of our imports done. We're ready to actually start writing some code, and of course that goes with getting data first. Now, we've gone over getting Skew T data a lot, not only in dedicated videos, but in other videos where we're making Skew Ts. So I'm not going to go too deeply into it here. We're of course going to need to know what station we're going to get data from, and we'll use trusty OUN. And then we'll need a date. In this case, we'll pick a severe weather day of May 2013, 12Z. Using Wyoming upper air, we're going to call the request data function and get that for our date and station. And then we're going to use the pandas data frame to unit arrays helper to turn that data frame with a units attribute into a dictionary of united arrays that we can use because they will have those units and they'll work for things like calculations. Going to need to get our parcel profile using the parcel profile function. And if we look at that function signature by pressing Shift-Tab, we'll see it takes pressure, temperature, and dew point. Pressure are the levels of interest, and temperature and dew point are the starting points for our parcel. So in that case, we're going to get the pressure data. From temperature, we're going to get the surface. Oh, that's data there. And from dew point, we're going to get the surface as well. And we're going to make sure that we get our result back in degree Celsius. I'm also going to calculate cape. I'm not going to store syn because in this case I'm really only interested in cape. Using the capesyn function. And if we look at that, it takes pressure, temperature, dew point, and a parcel profile, and it takes the profiles of all those things. So I'm going to copy and paste, remove my indices here so I get the whole profile. Okay, it says that we've got some duplicate pressures, and therefore we have duplicate temperatures in the output, no problem for our parcel profile. Now let's make the plot. Now we're pretty used to making Skew Ts, but because we're going to make this a compound plot with a Skew T on top, and on the bottom we're going to have that time series of cape that animates, we're going to use a layout method called GridSpec. We haven't seen this before in a MetPy Monday, but this is an easy way to define more complex layouts than you can do with simple subplots. I'm going to create a figure of fig size 6 by 8. I'm going to call GridSpec with 2 rows and 1 column. And I'm going to specify that the height ratios are going to be 3 to 1. So my Skew T is much taller than my subplot of the cape values, or the cape time series. And I'll trim my H space down so there's less white space between the plots. I'm going to create an instance of Skew T on our fig, and then we can specify what subplot, and in this case we're going to index into GridSpec and get the 0th axis. On that Skew T, I'm going to plot data pressure and data temperature. And I'll specify the color is tab red. Now we're going to copy and paste that. And we're going to plot the dew point. That one's going to be in green. And then we're going to plot the parcel profile. And for that one, we'll make it a black line. So let's just see what we've got. Okay, so our Skew T looks like a basic Skew T. No problems there. We don't see our second plot yet, but let's go ahead and add some wind barbs to our Skew T. Maybe we'll tweak the limits of it a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and create that time series plot. Okay, so I'm going to call plot barbs. And we're going to do that on our pressure, U-wind, and V-wind. So I'm going to take data pressure. This one is going to be U-wind. And finally, V-wind. And we can see we've got a lot of barbs plotted there. So we could do something like plot, say, every 5th barb. This is a common way to downsample that data. Okay, that looks pretty good, but I still got these barbs floating out up here. There are a number of ways that we could deal with that, and we've talked about some of them. But I'm going to remind you about the get layer function, because this is a really handy function. We're going to get a wind layer, call get layer, and it's very versatile. You can specify a height, a bottom, a depth. It can do interpolation for you. Very versatile function. But in this case, I'm going to give get layer pressure, U-wind, and V-wind. And starting at the surface, I'm going to tell it to give me a depth of 850 HPA. So that'll get us not all the way to the top of the sounding. And then here I'm going to call wind layer 0 to get our pressure, because it's going to return in the order that we passed it. So pressure, U-wind, V-wind. So U-wind will be 1. And vwind will be index 2. Okay, so we're downsampled now, and we're not coming off the top of the plot, so that solved that problem. Going to go ahead and call skew.ax to get access to the axis object. And I'm going to call set ylim, and let's go from 1050 to 100 HPA. Let's go ahead and set the xlim, which is our temperature axis, from -50 to 40. Just give ourselves a little bit more margin here. And then we're going to call set title on the axis, use an f string, station, and then let's use the date, and we're going to format the date as the year, the month, the day number, and the hour, followed by a Z. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, so this is looking pretty good now. I've got my title. I'm happy with the limits. I've got wind barbs that I'm happy with. Now we just need to go ahead and add that plot at the bottom of our time series of CAPE. So for that, I'm going to call it axis 2, and I'm going to call the add subplot method on our figure and give it the 1 index out of our GridSpec there, so the next plot. Right now we only have a single CAPE value, so I'm going to make them lists, the date and the CAPE. I'm going to go ahead and call the magnitude on that as well. And we want it to be marked points with lines connecting them. Let's go ahead and set the Y label as CAPE in units of joules per kilogram. And let's set the X label as date. We'll go ahead and set the Y lim to be from 0 to 3000 joules per kilogram. Okay, so now we've got a plot down here that's only a third as tall as our plot of the Skew T. It's got our single scatter point on it, and now this looks basically like that you saw in the animation. So next week what we need to do is get lots of data and create a function to update this plot. We don't want to redraw the whole plot every time. You could certainly do that, but it's going to be slow, and if you have many soundings to plot, you don't want to wait on that to happen. So I'm going to show you how to get handles to the lines and the barbs, remove them and modify them, and we'll make that animation soon. I hope to see you on next week's MetPy Monday.